links it all. Beautiful.
Hey. Hello, hello, welcome. Welcome to day 10 of the Global Prayer and Healing Community Gathering.
Links it
And
all.
oh, here we go. I always, of
Beautiful.
course, every day has been on mute, and today it decides it's not going to be on mute. Uh, so welcome. And as we start in our last day of the Global Prayer Healing Zoom space, where we come together in prayer and in love and in light and in healing with intention to really remind us, like this is a great reminder for me, that we are one, that we're better together, that we're stronger together, and through the ashes we will rise, and we get to rebuild and learn from our mistakes, learn from what wasn't working and not make those mistakes. And that's just like in life, right? And how we rebuild through the fires as well. Like, let's find sustainable ways that are fireproof, and the way that the fire department is funded, and all these things that can be also rebuilt as we rebuild. And so as you consider that, like, are you using your voice? Not just in this platform, but actually the people that can make the change. Are you calling your senators? Are you calling all the people that actually are the ones making choices? Your voice does matter because you matter. And if you really are seeing a future for your generations to come, this is the now moment that we get to choose how we're going to show up. Doing it scared, not knowing what you're doing or saying, just speak from your heart and be authentic. Like, it's how we talked about vision and values, like grounding yourself in what your vision is, and that vision aligns with your values. And when I was shuffling these cards, asking my guides, like, what does the collective need to hear today? And it says, I am doing the best I can. I am enough. Progress, not perfection. Journey, not the end result. Together, not alone. Having faith through the fear, or because of the fear. Just trusting and surrendering to it. Knowing that you every day are a part of the collective, and the experiences that we all have are a ripple of the choices that we make. And they extend outward, and they affect others, and it ripples from there as well. So what kind of ripple are you spreading in the world? I want to ripple joy and love in the world, and unity. The other thing that came up too was progressive muscle relaxation. And as we see more fires erupting, because that's the season we're in, we're reminded that one way that we can get back to the present moment and not get overwhelmed, because we've talked about energy medicine you can do for overwhelm, putting your hands like this or like this, right? Doing a heart strengthening if you're grieving or a loss, or you can, there was all these beautiful techniques that we've talked about for the last 9 days. And movement is the best form to really get you in the present moment, present in the now, present in your body, present with your emotions, with your feelings. And so as you sit here and it's Friday, you're probably thinking about the weekend and how the week went, and you're probably stressing out, or you're excited that you have a win. Whatever that is, just rub your hands together and just get present to hear. Like, maybe you're rubbing your arms, your thighs, or maybe you're grabbing your hair. Like, whatever gets you in the now moment. And if you're outside, take your shoes off and ground with nature. Get some of those positive ions and recharge. It's actually scientifically known that it reduces inflammation when you ground. I mean, I think I talked about having grounding mats if you're inside all day. And as we sit here, I want you to just kind of slowly start to like wiggle your feet, your toes, shake. Figure eights. Figure eights are always great for your energies. It helps. The more figure eights you have, the more vitality you have in your energies. And just, yeah, roll the shoulders. Oh, so much. Any parts that bend, there's a lot of tendency for energy to get blocked there. So always just, oh, that feels so delicious. So just remember that you always have a minute for you, a minute for self-care, a minute just to breathe. Because we've learned that breath really regulates your emotions. That fight, flight, freeze response, just allow yourself to breathe deep and bring all that beautiful oxygen, and then be grateful that you can take that deep breath. And as we are here, I wanted to just say good morning, my beautiful souls. There was a part of me, I went to bed late, I got inspired for how I was going to use this energy to continue to support and be a service. And so I started writing and writing and writing, and I was like, wow, you know what? I need to go to sleep. I have a last call. So this morning was a little difficult to get up. And so I just want to say it's been quite a journey for us here. And don't forget to share it, spread the word, come together, be of service. There's always a way that you can support, but start with yourself, fill yourself up. And I think that's been what we've all talked about in the last 2 weeks. So as we continue this week, I have a beautiful friend with me today. It was so great to catch up with her. And she wants to lead us in prayer. Because there is always somebody still struggling and still feeling a loss or grief, uncertainty, hopelessness. There was a volunteer, really quickly, I want to share the story. When I was at the recovery center, he volunteers for the Red Cross, and he had a button that said free hugs. It's this big teddy bear of a man, you know? And as I was walking past him, I was telling my friend Nick, who works with Capacity Path, I was like, oh my gosh, I want that button. Like, I love hugs. I need to. He's like, why don't you get a hug? And I was like, you know what? I will. So I was like, hey, can I have a hug? And so then we just had broken conversation, and there was so much that was shared between us. But one of the things he said that still resonates with me was, you can go 3 days without water. You can go 2 weeks without food, but you can't go 3 seconds without hope. And I was like, whew, I felt that in my body. So keep hope alive. Be hope. Be what is missing in the world. And you'll start to see it shifting before your eyes. I'm just going to take 1 minute, sit in silence, to let everything just sink in. Where you are today. What choice are you going to make? Are you going to beat yourself up about the mistakes you made? Or are you going to learn from them and just say, hey, that was there for me to grow? It was an opportunity for me to expand my awareness and my knowledge and my capacity for compassion and love of myself. And in doing so, it allows me to do that for others. Thank you. And with that, I want to introduce Letty Vidal. Letty, please tell us a little bit about you and what called you here. And thank you for being here.
Well, I feel so at peace. I want to open up by thanking you, Margarita. There's so much peace within, and it's an energy that's been activated going just listening to you and following those exercises. Obviously, my heart just explodes anytime we get to spend time together. I'm just so grateful for this community. I'm grateful for all the ways in which you are a blessing and and a reminder that we all just get to shine who we are, that reminder of living authentically, of just being who we are, um, and living from our hearts and forgetting about this and feeling, right? Um, because really the essence of who we are is so simple. It just, you know, that beingness, what a wow. I feel like it's such a connection, the mind body connection that you always share. What an important place for us to just really rest upon and really, you know, dropping into our hearts and being connected with our bodies and realizing that with intention, with breath, you know, just how much that opens us up. So thank you for that opening. In fact, that was one, well, I'll share a little bit about who, you know, who I am. I obviously had the joy of meeting you through the leadership, you know, hardcore leadership community. Specifically, actually, was PhD, right? So, um, and yeah, the minute I met you, I said a sister for life, an hermana for life. And how important it is that we continue to, you know, that we make space for people in our lives that really um, just align with the way in which we want to show up in the world. So, um, you know, I'm just living in a space of gratitude and also, you know, acknowledging that even though these are times and the reason, you know, why you felt called to provide this time of togetherness for everyone, you know, there's the heaviness of that, of the, you know, the impact of the tragedies and the catastrophe with the wildfires, but you know, there's that, and then there's, which is out of our control, but then the beauty of what we get to create in the midst of that, of those circumstances, that we could choose hope, that we could choose resiliency, that we could choose to pray, that we could choose to surround ourselves with people that will help us, support us to grow from difficult times. So in terms of my background, welcome. In terms of my background, I just want to share, it doesn't really matter who I am, but just so you know, I am just really connected with my purpose, my divine purpose and my calling, which is really to support those who just really everyone from the perspective of, um, you know, it's really about life and light. And so I start with my identity as a woman of faith, Christian faith. And so in my journey, I've realized that my vulnerabilities have always been things that I didn't realize was part of my calling, and how it's a strength in where I am in life, that it's like, no, I get to live in authenticity of who I am, that I am and you are loved, loved by God, right? Loved by your creator, loved, you know, and it's just so important for me to start with, like, that's my foundation, that's who I am, and I pray through all seasons of life. Um, and it's a relationship, right? I think just as, the relationship I'm blessed to have with Margarita, I'm blessed to have and cultivate a relationship with my maker. And so I do that through prayer, right? Prayer is simply talking and listening, just like in any great relationship, right? Listening, talking, and being inspired by just what happens. And sometimes the silence is really for me where it's just my greatest moments of joy with my maker. So I have just I have the God's word, the Bible, open up here, and I just felt like this is the verse that I prayed about to share with this beautiful community. And it is from the book of Psalm, and it really is, I think, one that maybe a lot of people know, but it's so poignant to where we are today with just all the loss, the grief that we may feel, rightfully feel, and I just, I'll open with that. So it's Psalm 46, verse 10. And I think it's a perfect verse for this season. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. And so the other two that follow is I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth, right? So that really speaks to me that we sit at the feet of God, that this world, that this beautiful nation, um, it is under God's dominion. And so today, while we might be mourning with grief, with despair, we get to trade that sorrow with hope, with trust, with assurance that God will move and that we will turn this pain into promises, into purpose, and that abundance will be ours again, right? It is so for me, it's just that freedom of knowing that unshakable truth that we are loved, right, by our maker, that we are cared for, and that we're basically commanded by this psalm, this loving psalm, is to be still. What can we do, right? We focus on not what's outside of us, but what's within us. Um, so, and I love how we're reminded. I've heard this, and Margarita, you probably have, and others, about what we focus on expands, right? So let us focus on gratitude. Let us focus on the promises of God, or as we think about our own spiritual lives, and let's focus on the messages of resilience of the word of God for me, especially in Psalms, really is comforting. And if anyone's interested, you can comment or reach out to Margarita. I'd love to share just a beautiful tool that I use, where I use the book of Psalm as comfort. And it's like this wheel of emotions. And then there's a perfect psalm for each of these different emotions. And so I'm just happy to pray with you, and I'll close in doing so because I think our next guest is ready. And so I just wanted to close with a prayer, and also just know this is a love offering. I want to fully respect everyone's faith traditions, and in that I know that we are one family, and there is one God, and God is love. God is all the goodness that we see in the world and that we express. And so That's the invitation, and that's the love offering that I have for you today. And again, happy to pray with you uh, beyond, just this moment that we have the opportunity to share. So, um, maybe if we want to close our eyes, I love to open my hands to be in this posture of receiving when I commune with God, with my Maker. And so I just invite you, whatever you're comfortable with, but just let's enter into this sacred time of prayer. Um, so, dear God, um, I'm just so grateful for who you are, that you are the Almighty Creator, that you love us, that you created us with infinite worth. I thank you that we can trust in your promises that are revealed in your sacred scriptures. Lord God, I thank you that your provisions are many, that in our weakness, you make us strong, Lord God. I thank you that you have enabled, Lord, so many compassionate souls, Lord, to reach all the areas, Lord, in Southern California, Father, and really all over the world. This is a global time of prayer that you have called this day, Lord, this mighty calling that you've put in Margarita's heart to bring this global community together. I just thank you again for your mighty provisions, Lord. I thank you and I just praise you for all the ways that you are reminding us that we are not alone, that we need each other, and that we are here for one another, God. And I just ask that you would continue to pour out blessings, Lord, that where there's grief, that there would be in this moment, um, just that you would feel that they would feel your love and your comfort because you are the good shepherd. We thank you that we are made in your image and we are made as beings of love to experience love and to give love. And I pray, God, that through these difficult times, that in due season, we would see all the beauty that's being created despite the pain. I thank you. We love you. And we lift up every hurting soul. And we trust that through broken times, there is the opportunity to choose hope and resiliency. I pray this in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Margarita. Natai, welcome. Please excuse me, or you'll teach me how to say your name correctly. But
Hi.
thank you all. And I'm here for additional prayers as well, one-on-one, or looking forward to just continuing to be with this community.
Thank you so much for the beautiful prayer. And Letty, again, I know this is not the last time we connect because I want to hear about New Zealand. And I feel my heart full and open in this moment with that prayer and the invitation to be of hope and resiliency. So thank you. So beautiful.
You're welcome. Love you.
So let's just pause after this prayer and just sink into what does hope look like for you? What does resiliency look like? Have you already probably have stories of resiliency? We don't go through this world with being unscathed. So lean in and listen. What do you need? What does the world need? And then show up. Be the permission, be the light. Because like I said, you matter and you are enough. And you ripple out into the world. Oh, Can't believe it's the last day. But I have Nitai here with us today, and you're gonna have to tell me how to say your last name. But this is her introduction here. We are all walking each other home, committed to the heart-centered belief that every person has with themselves the compassionate wisdom needing to heal. Nitai designs personalized legal policy psilocybin retreat program in Oregon from her foundational values of compassionate awareness and client-centered collaboration. Her purpose is to discover how her clients uniquely operate so she can help them attune to self-trust and discover their own medicine. Nitai is a trauma-informed facilitator who has worked with over 100 clients, facilitating group and individual journeys. Her experience crisis counseling at a rape crisis center, group facilitating at an outpatient drug rehab, and 3 years developing and facilitating psychedelic retreats allow her to compassionately witness and hold grounded space for grief and trauma release. I am so happy to see you and so honored to have you here. Please help me welcome Nitai.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's so interesting to be in the times we're at, where we've actually encountered so many unexpected challenges to surmount. And there are so many different ways in which I think the balance is between both how we step up and how we expand our ability to be gentle and compassionate with ourselves, and maybe even develop tools that we weren't necessarily handed in our society. And so, listening to you, Letty, and the sharing, like what really came to my mind is that, we are always operating spiritually, emotionally, and physically, and really they're all integrated. And we can't really separate them out from each other, right? So as I was listening to you, I was like, oh, there's this beautiful offering of spirituality. How can I complement and supplement it? And in the space of this offering and giving tools for people to begin to build that resilience, what is I'm kind of feeling into would be giving an offering in the space of a couple very practical tools that can help calm the nervous system. Maybe some, there's breath work, there's body scans. And in the space of experiencing the immediacy of like something like a disaster or tragedy to this degree, the body is actually putting out certain chemicals, adrenaline, to keep the functioning going. And what is important is to kind of have this understanding of the physiology and the nervous system and the recovery time, and to be so gentle with yourselves, because you're like the executive functioning of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is what you usually do to navigate logistics. Oh, I need this, I need to get this. And that's the first thing to go when your body is can be in survival mode. And so I think I want to kind of say to everybody, like, the more you can soften around not being able to do things the way you normally are able to do them, the less that you will add your own judgment and criticism to what is already a super extreme time. So small, short regulation practices that you can do in the car, right? That you can do in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I think can be really valuable to give you that spaciousness, to calm the body down. Maybe stop the cortisol or the adrenaline from sort of taking over. And to be in the understanding that it can be really intense to go into the store to buy a toothbrush because suddenly you realize I don't have anything. I got to buy socks. I don't have underwear. And, my connection to LA is that I lived in LA for 15 years. I fully consider it one of my homes, and I moved about 2 years ago, but my heart feels like it is bleeding with all of you. And I also recently held space for a client who went through Hurricane Helene, and different element, different natural disaster, same complete and total loss. She lost everything. And she called me, and she was like such a strong, like a woman who's been through everything in her life. And she was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And she was having a panic attack because she walked into a store to get a toothbrush and underwear. And she just, so it's like really having that space that this is probably unlike anything you've ever experienced. And the more we can be in the softness, be in the understanding, that the less weight we're adding to an already weighty situation. And then you can reach in and rely on God, rely on each other, right? So what I would like to do is begin by tuning us into a very short somatic exercise. And I might extend it a little bit, but with the consciousness that people can replay this. And actually, Margarita, what might be valuable as well is to take a timestamp of when certain things start so people can actually go right to it, and the rather than having to sort of like weed through the whole, yeah. Um, so I invite you, wherever you're at, maybe it's your car, maybe it's your home, to kind of take stock of your surroundings and genuinely ask yourself, am I in a space that feels safe enough right now for me to actually go inward, for me to feel safe, for me to close my eyes? And if it doesn't feel safe for you to close your eyes, actually, what you can do is soften your eyelids, soften your gaze, so there's still awareness, with the understanding that in a trauma-informed space, being aware of your surroundings can sometimes feel safer than closing your eyes. So whatever it is that works for you, I invite you to just begin to turn your focus toward the inner landscape of your being, to the space underneath your skin, to really sink in to your body. Maybe you feel your feet on the ground, your hip bones held up by whatever it is you're sitting on. And then just begin to notice the flow of air that enters in and out of your body. There's no need to fix or change anything. Just begin to notice the feeling of the air on the top of your lip or through your mouth, the way that your chest rises and falls. The way that your breath is giving you what you need right now in this moment. Your breath is a tool, and it's one over the course of this next 45 minutes or so, maybe a little bit less. We're going to really begin to look at how you can utilize something that is always available to you to really honor your body, to really honor your own inner being. We're going to do what's called a body scan. This is a tool you can utilize to just check in, tune in with how you're doing. Your body is always giving you messages. It's always letting you know. And the more we begin to attune to the whispers, then they don't need to become yells. So we're going to start at your feet. And I invite you to put your awareness on your toes. Take a moment to just feel your toes. And what we're going to look for in this body scan is any heightened sensations in the body. And when I say sensation, what I mean is not necessarily a feeling or emotion, but something like I feel tingles. I feel a little bit of contraction. I feel a little bit of a jittery feeling in my belly. Sensations are a energy that's moving or not moving in a certain way in your body. So moving up from our toes, we're going to come to the arches of our feet, to our heels, up into our ankles. And I'm going to invite you to really bring in loving and tender curiosity as we touch each part of your body. And then we're going to bring the awareness up to our shins and our calves, to your knees, to your thighs, your hamstrings, and allow that loving awareness to move up to your hips, to your pelvis, to your lower back, and circle around to your lower belly. And then gently move up to the space where your ribs fall open into your belly. Circle around to your mid back. Move up to your shoulder blades and all the muscles between your shoulder blades, back behind your heart. Notice with loving awareness your rib cage, how valuable it is to protect such a precious part of you, how it has the flexibility to rise and fall with your breath, and just continue to notice sensations. Sensations, they don't have to change or be different. Just notice them. And now move your awareness up to your shoulders, the tops of your shoulders, your collarbone, and allow that awareness to slide down your arms to your biceps and triceps, to your elbows, to your forearms, your wrists, your thumbs, your fingers, just noticing. And now allow that conscious awareness to move all the way back of your arms to your neck, the sides of your neck, the back of your neck where your spine meets your skull. Allow that awareness to come to your mouth. Notice if there's any tension in your tongue. See if you can allow your tongue to relax toward the bottom of your mouth. Bring that awareness to your jaw. Notice if there's any tension in your jaw. If you feel like you want to, you can even take your fingers and just kind of gently massage the space right below your cheekbone, where your cheekbone and your jawbone meet. Bring your awareness up to your temples, to the space between your eyebrows. Oftentimes, this is where your vagal nerve is. For those of us that are a little more on the woo side, your third eye. And oftentimes when we're thinking really hard, when we're trying to figure it out, we will put tension right in that space between our eyebrows. I invite you, if it feels good, you can tap the center of your third eye, or you can massage it gently open. And now I invite you to just kind of note, to take stock. Was there a space in your body that had extra sensation? What part of your body is calling you the loudest? What part of your body is asking for extra attention? And maybe you have more than one, maybe you have three, but for the purposes of time, we're going to go to the one that has the loudest voice right now, the most sensation. And as you travel back to that space, I invite you to get really curious about it. And we're going to ask the questions. What does this energy feel like? And here we're going to allow our creative mind to get to play a little. Does it feel like electricity? Does it feel like a weight, like a rock? Maybe it's like a rock you can't really see through. Maybe it's a little more fluid, like sludge. Whatever it is that you feel this energy is encapsulating, maybe it's a color that comes to your mind, maybe it has a certain texture. I invite you to imagine you're just kind of curious, almost like you would be as a kid looking at something you've never seen before. Like, what is this? And as you take stock of this energy, we're going to begin to work with it. Energy can always be transmuted. We have the ability, not by trying to push out or reject, but inviting transformation into a space to shift an energy that is present. So now look at this sensation, look at this place in your body and ask yourself, what do you need? What do you need? And if it's something that has a lot of weight to it, I invite you to think about an energy that would help shift, that would work with the energy. For example, if it's like a feels sludgy and kind of almost like a tar or something like that, I invite you to think about what would add more fluidity, what would maybe dissolve it, what would help to shift it. Maybe you need to imagine holding something in a ball of light. Whatever it is that works for you, what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 breaths. And as we breathe in, we're going to imagine bringing in that energy and sending it straight to that spot and allowing it to really interact, to really create this space of working with, nurturing that energy that needs something to help it shift and move and transmute. So as you breathe in, just imagine that you're bringing in that element or that energy, sending it straight to that spot. And as you breathe out, just imagine that any residue, anything that needs to sort of release, comes out through your breath. And we're going to do that again 2 more times. Breathe in, let the energy kind of play and shift and move and transmute. And then release on an exhale. We're going to do this 1 more time. And note that if you're at home and you have the time and space, you can actually take as many breaths as you need until you feel things shifting. Now take a minute with that space, wherever you're at with it. Notice that bringing awareness to a space in your body is in itself healing. Because in the act of noticing, you're basically giving your body what the sensation is asking for, which is attention. Please pay attention. Please note that something isn't quite right here, and I just want you to notice that I'm giving you a message. And if it hasn't totally transmuted yet, I invite you to actually say, hey, I see you. I hear you. I'll come back to you. And of course, say that if you really are going to come back, because you're developing self-trust. And then we're going to take a moment. We're going to say kind of goodbye to that space. And I invite you to find your center, wherever it is, from the top of your head to the base of your spine, wherever the place that you feel the most centered and connected today in your body. I invite you to land there and to just imagine that you see yourself, a tiny version of yourself, sitting in a beautiful colored orb. Whatever color comes to you as being the one that you feel the most connected to, I invite you to just imagine that you are sitting in this beautiful colored orb, centered, focused. And from that space, I invite you to keep this inner awareness as you begin to sort of open up and reconnect to your outer awareness. So maybe you feel suddenly the air on the top of your skin. Maybe you begin to press your hands into your thighs. We're bringing ourselves more into this external awareness, which we need to navigate the world. But keeping attuned to self, attuned to your inner awareness, is very powerful to know where you're at and what you need as you navigate external circumstances, which are sometimes beyond your control. So, keeping that self attunement, begin to notice the sounds in your outer environment. I personally have people doing a lot of yard work, so you might even hear my sounds in my external environment right now. But whatever it is, just notice that awareness coming up and out, and do it gently. If you're susceptible to meditation, sometimes it takes longer to come to external presence. So maybe you need a little more body movement. Maybe you need to begin to move your spine a little bit. Begin to, if your eyes are closed, begin to feel your eyeballs. Maybe look left with your eyes still closed and look right with your eyes still closed so you can feel your eyeballs moving against your eyelids. And then just kind of note that I'm going to open my eyelids in just a little bit and allow your eyelids to slowly open. Maybe take a look around your space. Begin to orient yourself. Look at something in your space. Take a moment. Just kind of stay with it. Okay, here I am. And then when you feel ready, just allow yourself to come back into focus of you in your space, in your body, centered and in tune with whatever it is you just learned, whatever it is you just listened to in your body. So I'm going to pause for a minute because that's, I think, a 5 to 10 minute somatic body scan, probably more like 10. Time can be weird for me. But that's a great way to center yourself in your body, to tune into the messages your body's giving you, and to really work with it and to understand that with your breath alone and with awareness, you actually have the power to do some movement. So I'm going to pause real quick and check in with you guys here before I offer a quicker, shorter exercise.
Thank you. I just want to share real quick what came up for me was just, yeah, I was called to the solar plexus, like my pancreas, and I just imagine bringing sweetness and honey to that space. And also yellow, which is cheer and joy, which is also like the sweetness and joy of life. So, thank you for that. And I love this beautiful tool I can use every time to come and nurture myself and love on myself in that way and get intimate with myself that way. So that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That was my word too, Margarita. I feel so nurtured,
Mhm.
so nurtured. And the water was sort of that healing for my shoulders or my back, I'd say actually. Oh, and yeah, I just feel so present and aware.
Mhm.
Such a powerful, simple tool.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so interesting because a lot of us are trained to critique, criticize, or judge ourselves when we're having a hard time. And the power of actually flipping the script and nurturing ourselves is what we don't realize. I often say to people, like, when the nervous system goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, we generally think of it as an external, a reaction to an external. But what we don't realize is that when we attack ourselves with our thoughts and words, with judgment and with criticism, we actually send our own nervous system into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so the way that we learn to speak to ourselves and to learn to, when we're in times of crisis, to actually not criticize ourselves, but to utilize these little tools of how can I be my own biggest supporter? How can I be my own greatest champion? How can I stop when I'm already in fight or flight and actually be my own co-regulator? It's not always possible. And that's why other people and your communities are so powerful, is because sometimes you can't shift your energy alone. But if you begin to attune to when you're getting dysregulated, you can employ these self-regulation tools quicker, more quickly. And I'm looking at the long haul here. Like, I'm not even like, you might not even have the ability to utilize this right now. But down the road, as you're recovering from PTSD, like these are tools that are going to be very important in your self regulation tool belt. So, along that line, that was actually probably the most intricate of the offerings I'm going to give. Um, I want to give the knowledge that the quickest way to downregulate the nervous system is by extending your out breath. So, what does that look like? Normally, when we start to experience panic or hyper, anything, we actually hold our breath or take in really big inhales. And so, we're always working either from the outside in or the inside out. So, one of the most valuable things you can do if you find yourself in a panic attack is actually do your best to, something we already kind of used, is to focus, hyper focus on something in your external environment. Because generally, when that happens, you go inward and your inner being is chaos and you can't breathe. And if you can't breathe, you think you're dying. So what I want to do is say that these tools that I'm giving you hopefully are very real in a way that you can implement them. So focusing on something in your present moment, and getting really detailed. Like, okay, I'm going to keep my eyes open. I'm going to look at that tree and I'm going to try to find the veins on the leaf of that tree. So once you like actually hyper focus on that, then you can bring in the breath and counting. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4. This is not going to happen immediately, right? But what's interesting is if you can start extending your out breath, that means a longer exhale. When you have a longer exhale, like when you sigh, how relaxed are you when you sigh? You're like, it actually sends the message to your body and to your nervous system that you are down regulating. When you're down regulating, it means you are relaxing. And so I'm giving these steps because you can't go from panic to long out exhales. You need to actually orient yourself to the present, begin to get your mind in and out of your head and into something that's just like the veins of on a leaf, the details of that picture. And then you can begin to change your breath, because that will be the most powerful tool in actually regulating your body. So the counting first evenly, and then starting to extend the exhale. So you can then go to, okay, I'm going to breathe in 4 and I'm going to try to breathe out 6. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you may not even hit 4, maybe 2 first, whatever it is, right? Adjust. And then I'm going to see if I can breathe out 6. So now you're breathing in, and then you're breathing out long breaths, which are telling your system, okay, we're regulating. And then if you really want to find a little bit of traction, now you're there, okay, maybe your breath is starting to regulate, but you need to ground in. There's something called a box breath. And that's breathing in 4, holding for 4, breathing out for 4, holding for 4. And you can literally, in your mind, imagine an orb. You can either imagine like a box, right? Like you're drawing a box with your breath, or you can imagine an orb that expands, pauses, and then contracts. Pause. And what's interesting is that contraction is a natural part of expansion. Like, we actually are not meant to be up all the time. We're not meant, like, there's in the winter, we have cycles. The winter everything needs to die. It needs to, so in the spring, it can rejuvenate again. But when there's times of expanded or extended contraction, right? We have to completely readjust. And this is like when you're in crisis, like it's not normal. You don't have the normal flow of expansion and contraction. So you have to kind of rebuild. And it might take more rest when you can actually rest, when you actually can just finally be safe enough to not be on adrenaline. You might be exhausted, right? So it's like finding these moments to tune in to yourself and ask yourself what you need. What is it I need right now? What can I give myself right now? Maybe it's a glass of water. Maybe it's 5 minutes. Maybe whatever it is, like those things actually are going to be really crucial. Okay, so I'm going to pause right there and just kind of like get responses and tune in with you a little bit, Margarita, as well, because I'm not quite sure where we are even at time, but
Yeah, we're halfway there. And yeah, I'm loving the tips of attuning and listening to your body.
Mm.
Yes, it all is resonating. And it is a great reminder that you have control, right? It's what you choose in that moment. What letting go of what's not serving you. So just coming back into what it is that you need. So that's a great reminder and a great tool.
Yeah, thank you. And it's like there's these layers. And what I've learned is that our body, and if we feel out of control of our body, that's the baseline, right? And so once we get that under control, now we're moving into the regulation of our emotions. And of course, it's all interlinked, right? And it's like faith, spirit, drawing strength from the universe. That's like a resource, right? That comes in. And maybe these regulation tools are not as aligned for you as dropping into prayer. So it's all about like literally understanding what works best for you and having it at your fingertips. So when you feel totally disoriented and chaotic, that you go, okay, I'm going to reach for that. It's right there. It's right there. Okay, great. Prayer. Okay, it's right there. And part of what we do when we talk about working in crisis or anything like that is realizing that the more you can set yourself up to have those things really accessible, because you don't, when your executive function turns off, you can't go look for it. It's like you're not in the space to go find it. It's like set it up so it's literally like if you can set things up on your cell phone, right? On your apps, on your whatever. So literally put things in your car, maybe like a calming scented oil in your car, like lavender, like whatever it is, you can set yourself up. So that stuff is right there. Yeah. If you like flower essences, there's like great trauma stabilizer that my mom always sends me. Um, and it's just like having those things right next to you or traveling with you in your purse and your whatever. Like these are like ways to kind of be in a constant care of yourself. And it's a new normal. So the old stuff isn't even really applicable. But how you care for yourself in this heightened crisis requires that when you're not in that heightened state and you have a little extra brain space, that you plan ahead. Like essentially you're like planting the seeds for your future self to be more cared for. So yeah, in the space of that, I'm feeling called to talk a little bit more about this concept of like grace and this concept of being in a different space and comparing yourself to the old self. That I think is the hardest thing I find in any situation, but especially in crisis when you are literally living through something you've never lived through before. And it is like one of the most intense things you can experience. And so it's like what I heard a lot from my client after Hurricane Helene, and this was a woman in her 70s. And she just kept saying, I don't even know who I am anymore. This is not me. I've never been this way. I don't cry. I don't lose my I don't lose my mind like this. I don't lose like I don't know who I am. And so when you experience something that's that extreme, it's kind of like all bets are off. Like you actually will not be the same again, but you will still be the essence of you. And I think really starting to refine that the essence of your soul is there. It's just actually expanding. It's such a like tragedy, right? But also now your depth of understanding the human condition and what people maybe have experienced all over the world. It's not it's not a gentle it's not a gentle expanding, and it's an extremely painful one, but it is an expansion, right? So the more grace you give yourself, like, oh, I don't expect myself to act the way I usually do. Like this sense, I think I want to normalize a loss of sense of self. Like, what is it to really just know that you're both not alone? You're going to find yourself again. And right now, having no idea who you are is also super normal. Right. And this is based on one person's experience and my deep work with her. So I also want to say this may not be everybody's experience. You know, um, the spectrum is as diverse as there are human beings. And, but the idea of grace for ourselves and each other comes down to the idea that every human being, when pressed against the edges of survival, is going to react along a spectrum. And there will be days in which altruism is in full bloom, and there will be days in which, maybe something closer to the opposite is in full bloom. And you are survival does interesting things to us. Have grace with yourself, have grace with others. right? And grace is one of those really interesting words that we say, but it's more of a thing that's felt than it is a thing that's like, you know what I mean? It's like when I say grace, you probably feel it in your body a little bit. You're probably like, oh God, yeah, like I get that feels like I'm a little relaxed. I'm a little like I feel understood, but I couldn't actually define the word grace for you. You know what I mean? But we kind of innately know. So my invitation would be, how can you explore how to have more grace for yourself and what that looks like for you? Maybe it's a way you speak to yourself. Maybe it's forgiving yourself for having a really intense reaction. Maybe it's forgiving someone else for having a really intense reaction. And when we allow space and grace for people to kind of have these things, inherently it will come back to us. Somebody else will be gracious and graceful and have grace for us when we are in a moment of reactivity. And that act is a beautiful thing because it actually is healing. When someone experiences that level of reaction and you can just be with them and say, like, I understand, there's a level of deeper acceptance that's actually profoundly healing. So that being said, I'm going to take it to another level, which is we don't always have capacity to hold space for others. And what do I mean by capacity? I mean that when our own nervous system, body, soul is tapped out, sometimes we want to show up a certain way and we just don't actually have the internal or external resources. So when we take something like the body scan, where we're actually tuning in, that's also a great thing to say, what is my capacity? And another way of putting capacity is like, have you ever been in the space where like you've had a really bad day and maybe your partner or your friend doesn't know that you've had a really bad day and you walk in the door and they just like are like, I had a terrible day. I want to tell you all about it right now. And you don't really have the capacity in that moment to be the calm space for them. And so I think what can kind of cut down on conflict, right, in the space of crisis is to kind of note or be able to take enough space to tune into yourself and clearly say, I really would like to be there for you right now, but right now I'm aware that I don't have the capacity to hold the kind of space I want to for you. That kind of dialogue and that kind of awareness of your own capacity actually is super important, because if someone's in a traumatized state and you can't hold space and actually react at them, it widens the wound. Whereas if you can directly know your own boundary and say calmly and respectfully, but lovingly, I maybe can help you to someone else right now, but I'm aware that I can't be a positive healing space because I don't have the resources. I don't have the capacity. That other person can probably hear that in a balanced way and not feel injured. That's the neutral territory. And so what we're aiming for is, hey, if I can't benefit, how do I neutralize and send you to someone who is resourced? This is a level of self-awareness, right? But as we're all healing together, it's like the more we can understand where we're at, the more we can shift the resources around to where they're needed. You don't have to do it all. But when you can't, be honest about it. And then how much, again, when you're in that place where you're have a little more energy, how much can you build your resource list? So guess what? If someone comes to you and they're, hey, I can't right now, I can't hold space for that, but here's someone who can, right? So we're in this space of just like doing our best and also doing our best to, again, care for self, care for others. It really has to be balanced right now. Because when you're more resourced, you can then go back out and start resourcing others. But if you just have to tap out because the adrenaline is pushing you to do more, do more, do more, do more, it can actually burn you out so much. And we don't want that, right? So these are just like a couple more things to think about. What's your inner capacity? How can you normalize lovingly and respectfully telling someone when you're at capacity? I'm going to pause there again and see where we're at regarding thoughts and yeah, just anything that came up for you around that.
For me, Natai, I feel like the what these tools are doing is that tuning in, that build creating awareness is self-care. It's prioritizing self and realizing that we get there's this, that Viktor Frankl, the space between reaction. You get that right? Like there is that opportunity for us to take responsibility and really assess, um, where are we, right? Like that inner versus the outer world. Um, and caring for yourself, and how when you do that you model for others, like, oh yeah, when you're normalizing, like, yeah, it makes, I didn't do X, or because of the right, it just helps to, it's a shift for everyone else as well. I think that those are like, that's the power of all of this, is that, it really does help to create in you this sense of self-care, love, compassion, grace, and then that effect for others, where they get to also sort of see ways in which they can respond. So it's just, yeah, I think that really spoke to me, was that ability to cultivate that tuning in, that being present, and how powerful that is.
Yeah, thank you. And I think what is so important for me to stay connected to is that I'm looking at a spectrum and I'm looking at the reality that when you're in survival mode and crisis, generally it's you're not over here going, like, how have I self-regulated today? How much compassion do I have for myself? You're probably not there yet. You're in, how do I function? How do I actually function? How do I meet my bare minimum? How do I survive? And so making the connection of the tools, if I can sit here and do a box breath for 30 seconds, or if I can just try to extend my exhale for 30 seconds, because that's all I have time for right now, standing in this line to get resources, or sitting in my car if you have a car, right? Like, I really want to like normalize that. What I'm trying to do is show the spectrum and like lower expectations. Like, hey,
Right.
this is grace, right? Grace is like not expecting yourself to be able to understand even what your capacity is right away. But if you choose to hold on to this Zoom recording and keep it for later, what you're looking at is the long game,
Mm.
right? And right now, like, you may not even be able to touch that yet. And the understanding of like, yeah, all bets are off. All bets are off, right? Like in certain ways. And it's just like in the moment. How do I keep my body functioning? How do I keep my brain functioning in the moment? Your breath is one of your most powerful tools, right? And then, and then when I have time and space and I'm in this long-term healing journey, how do I begin to check in with myself regularly? How do I begin to nurture myself regularly? Because healing from PTSD is a thing, right? This is a trauma, and it's a citywide trauma. So it's something we're going to be doing together. And so being able to say 2 months from now, wow, I just had a really bad day. I wasn't expecting this to loop around, but I'm in it. And actually, my capacity is lower than I thought. That's going to be a powerful tool then, right? And being in that place where we're passing the baton to each other. Hey, I don't have this. Oh, I do. I'm resourced enough today to normalize the dialogue of that is the long-term plan in my mind, right? And I'm not even in it. So I'm a little bit talking out of my whatever here. So please also know that I never know more than you do, right? Like you are always your own wise healer. And sometimes we just don't have the tools because they don't teach these in schools. Right? Like they don't teach you to regulate your nervous system. Some schools, maybe they do, maybe that's shifting, but it's like, there are times when we have to get out of the intellectual mind and into the body because the intellectual mind is stuck on a loop and our body is freaking out. So knowing when to exercise that is really valuable because the nervous system an unregulated nervous system in the body can have the mind going nuts. And it's like we are a society that tries to work through the mind constantly. Okay, let's go to talk therapy. Let's talk it out. And what I've learned is that sometimes you cannot get out of the mind unless you get out of the mind. Meaning, okay, get into the body. Are you still looping? Okay, right now, let's just whatever it is, jog in place, go for a walk, and so as many tools as I can provide, um, that would be the goal. And then everything else is going to evolve because if you can create space to tune into your own inner wisdom and your own healer, the answers will come. And then when you have that space, you can also tune into whoever your higher power is. You can be more present with others. Yeah.
And how vital too that you're sharing this, because I'm thinking of those who've, just thinking of our brothers and sisters that, lost their homes, right? Depending on where there might be in another location and being present, so not being so focused on what's outside of you is so critical because, our homes are like sanctuary. There's so much emotion, and now it's a place where we have, right, a lot of grief and maybe physical isolation, but how powerful that we can be reminded that in these moments, we have tools, we have ways in which to anchor us, to be focused on where we are in this moment to begin that healing, as you said, and that's the important piece, right? The spectrum, the
Mm.
seasons.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I actually went to a panel. A friend of mine is creating an extraordinary nonprofit for homeless youth. And it's called Scorpion Creek Ranch. It's going to be up here in Oregon, but her hope is to create an ongoing model that will become national and maybe international. And we had a panel of youth, all who have been homeless, tell about their experiences. And they were saying things like, yeah, you don't understand, the system will say, go show up and get your free sandwich. But when you don't know where you're going to sleep tonight, or you don't know where the roof is going to be over your head tonight, that's more important now than your sandwich. You know what I mean? But it kind of becomes this loop because it's like, well, if I don't eat, if I don't sleep, sleep deprivation now makes it really hard to do anything. But if I don't eat, not having food to fuel me to find the place to sleep now becomes a thing. And they were saying things that I have also become aware is really relevant to Los Angeles, which is like, you actually don't understand how important storage is to us. When we don't have a place to live, even if people are now giving us resources, if we don't have a home, you may be giving me a closet full of clothes, and I can only travel right now with a tiny little carry-on bag. So actually saying, I have space in my closet, some of those nice new clothes you're getting, can I store it in your closet? Like, these are things that you don't think about unless you're actively homeless. Or, stuff that's Pasadena Humane Society is doing, taking care of animals. And somebody, this, young person who was homeless yesterday said, what I would have given to have someone say, I will foster your dog till you are ready to get your dog back. Because right now you don't even have a place to sleep, but you love your dog so much. It's like an added thing. I love my animal. I want my animal. My animal is helping resource me. But I need to be able to know that you will take care of something I care about and that I can go back to it as I get resourced. So being in the mindset of understanding the immediacy of these things is going to trump all of this is like, okay, but yes, but can I do a 4 count breath when I'm starting to veer into a place of like such dysregulation? I can't figure out where I'm going to sleep tonight. So this is like what we're in the space of, like always circling back to, is being present and accepting and trying to problem solve what's in front of us with understanding of where we're at, grace for where we're at, and then just building as we can. Yeah. So I think that's most of what I got. I know we have 30 minutes left, but and I could probably figure out ways to take up that time. Because, you know,
Yeah, I think
um,
it would be good just to kind of, first of all, thank you. That was so beautiful. And I love the permission to not have it look a certain way, right? Like just give yourself that open space where you're learning, you're in tuning with yourself. And when you start to create your boundaries, is what I heard, right? Like creating your boundaries and clearly stating them. And sometimes we don't know what those boundaries are, right? When we're not tapping into like, oh, is it the capacity thing? Did I not, oh, I didn't do my meditation today, or I didn't take the time to self-care and fill myself up. That's why I'm out of capacity. Or yeah, maybe you just had a really bad day, right? And you fractured yourself, like you left place yourself in places and you haven't collected yourself and just being like, oh, I'm not really here in my body right now. And, and then also but then also what I heard too is also like being responsible and then doing what it takes for you to regulate yourself so that you can be at capacity and then come back and say, hey, I'm
mhm,
ready to have this conversation with you now, like to be here for you and hold space for you, and then I think it's a beautiful dance and it's going to be fumbling and falling apart, but like the more that you neutralize it, like you said, and you make it be your
mhm.
go-to and like the normal,
Yeah.
it becomes really just effortless and easy. And then sometimes you'll be like, I think I remember hearing Tony and his wife, Sage, I believe her name is, how they talk about, where are you? I'm at 20. Or is it Brene? I forget who it was, but somebody I remember reading where they're saying, checking in with their husband, saying, where are you? They're like, I'm at an 80. But well, I'm at 100. I'll get you 20, or like figuring out where you are
Mhm.
when you connect, coming back from a day at work or whatever, and just kind of tuning in and going, hey, where are you right now? Oh, yeah. Like that's a beautiful space to support and create connection on a deeper level.
And normalizing not people pleasing, but also not being disrespectful. Because when the survival mechanism kicks in, generally what we do is externally blame, right? You just came over and dumped on me. Okay, well, that's interesting. Why don't we start creating a dialogue where when we're not in crisis? Again, I really want to come back to this idea of this, some of this stuff is not going to apply right away. It's not going to apply right now. Um, and I actually, something I'm kind of thinking that maybe talking a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the chakras as a way of kind of understanding, like when your root is uprooted, it creates this like need to do that first, right? And that's a roof over your head. That's home. That's safety and security. It's also safety and security with others though, right? So that's kind of all over the place in this space of crisis. And so yeah, I want to come back to that. I sort of lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Um oh, communication. Like in my best relationships in my life, um we have learned a code system. And it is to check into what someone is available for in advance. So I have, and I joke, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like my Amber Alert, right? Like, but I really will say to someone, I'll say, hey, my best friend, because she's it's really intense personality, and I'm a really intense personality, and yet we work great. Why? Because we have worked out a system where if I need to talk, I will say to her, hey, I need to talk. Um, it's like medium level intensity. Are you available for that? And she'll either say, hey, yeah, I've got space. I've got space right now. I can totally listen. Or she'll say, hey, I don't really have space for that right now. And then we have a level that if I'm like in dire need, I will say like this is an SOS. Like basically I need you to come over. Like this is like I'm in crisis. And she will either say right away, right? Because she doesn't always, right away, okay, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Or she'll say, hey babe, I'm so sorry. Who do you have next to call? I'm not available for that right now. Who do you have next to call? And so it's in the space of learning to tune in so you can actually have someone show up and say, yeah, I can receive this. And then also normalizing what? Like advice giving, like, I don't want advice right now. I actually can't handle. I'm actually not in problem solving mode. That's executive functioning. What I need to do is just talk about my feelings, talk about how I feel, talk about how hard it seems right now. So, like, here we now have these ways in which we're learning to better support each other and to better ask for support. And we're also normalizing someone's no. It's okay to say no. Because then I have permission to say no. And it doesn't mean that I'm rejecting you. It means I'm actually loving you so much I don't want to give you a response that would harm you further. And some of the most painful experiences I've had in my life is when someone has not voiced their needs, not not been honest about how they didn't have capacity, and then made it a blame game. You're this, you're that, you're whatever. And so, like, hey, oftentimes when we're in times of crisis and we're resetting ourselves, are actually opportunities to be in really honest spaces, really authentic spaces with each other. Let's normalize a new level of honesty. Let's normalize a new level of communicating our capacity. Let's normalize not taking it personally. When someone says, hey, I don't have capacity for that right now. Okay, great. Let me see if someone else does. And so these great levelers can give us an opportunity to reset systems that weren't working when we're available for that, right? When we can access it. So this is the other interesting thing is one of these young people said, when I was in crisis and I was in mental health crisis, I couldn't find or get to the resources I needed to get me out of crisis. So, in the space of us brainstorming what we can do, I would say, how are we dropping pamphlets to anyone with phone numbers? Like, what if someone doesn't have access to internet or social media? Like, in what ways can we actually hand someone physically a list of numbers, a list of addresses, a list of resources? I'm sure someone's doing it in LA, but like, just, and they were saying, I couldn't go find it. I needed you to find me. So I am actually like, wow, this is really interesting. Is there any, like, this was a young homeless person. So like, what is it to actually have an outreach team that goes around and actually says, hey, I've got this in my car right now. I see you here. I want to check in and see how you're doing. And if you don't have the space to carry this right now, I want to give you a pamphlet of all these resources so you have it right on your hand. And maybe you don't even have a cell phone right now. Maybe you need to go borrow someone's phone, but call this number. So we're like in the space of learning what is actually needed. Yes. Soapbox done.
So, so good. And I know of some organizations that are truly on, have this outreach model of like, because as you said, and thinking about where the limitations might be in the individuals having that information. And the other thing that occurred to me is how we as neighbors, like I live in Northern California, but I know, I certainly know folks on the ground and some that have been displaced, some that have lost homes, and just asking them, how are you coping? What's on your heart today? Right? And today being the operative, right? Because it's like, so how are you coping is a very, right, hope-filled message. And it's also meeting them where they are, right? And letting them know that, I'm available for you to release
Mhm,
some of what might be burdening you.
mhm, mhm,
Um, yeah, those are such because that's what it is, as you said, Natai, meeting folks with where they are and in crisis. Oh, we are not operating necessarily, it just you
yeah,
can't, you're what's in front of you, right? So
totally.
so critical to think about all the different ways.
And that's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be like, I don't have time to feel right now. I need to like, right? And somebody's going to be like, I just need to like feel because I can't function until I feel. So we're going to have all sides of the spectrum. And I think another thing that feels important to mention is that I think we also live in a society that puts things on unrealistic timelines, especially when it comes to grief and processing emotion. Like, grief is not linear. What a lot of people don't know is the 7 stages of grief are not meant to be a line. They actually are, it's like a spiral or a circle. So you will cycle through these and then you will sometimes hit them 10 years later. And sometimes the way that our society moves, it'll be like, oh, God, you're not over that yet. Like, that's probably one of the most detrimental things because repression is actually very harmful. So, in this space of accepting and continuing to accept and continuing to accept and continuing to accept, the acceptance is the grace that actually allows movement. And so, I find that that is really important on a societal level. Like, hey, and something I said to someone the other day was, I lost my father to leukemia, and 10 years later, during COVID, when I was at more of a full pause than I had ever been, when my life was stopped more than I had it stop in 10 years, I had a new wave of grief. It was like stuff I hadn't processed because I'd never been that still before came up, and it was 10 years later. There's no timeline, especially when it's something as major as a loss of home and an entire community or an entire block or a parent or a pet, even a pet. Like pets are little angels, right? So it's like there's no timeline. Like, yes, how you heal and how you continue to function is there. But like, if you 10 years from now have a new wave of grief, like, let's also normalize that, right? And I think that there's some things that you don't quote unquote get over. I think you find a new relationship with the loss. And that's a distinction. Why would you want to get over something you love? You don't get over it. You loved it. You cared about it. And how deeply you're grieving is how deeply you loved, but your relationship to the loss and what arises for you within that might shift. And yeah, there's just phrases, right? There's phrases our society uses that I think have been actually quite harmful. And so we can also start to shift those because it creates expectations with each other and for ourselves that aren't in the embracing of the human experience.
No, like there are so many beautiful, just like talking points to this whole thing. And I've been making like 3 or 4 pages of notes and like business idea even sparked through this whole thing. And so just I want to just acknowledge you for your wisdom. And you know, like I know that Letty and I have been also on the journey of recognizing this, like knowing about normalizing and mindset and how you speak and what to create. But it's a beautiful container that you really put it in for us, Nitai. And there were so many tools you gave us in this whole entire hour and a half or 45 minutes, hour and 15 minutes that you've been on. And so like the big ones are like obviously normalizing the grief journey. And you never get over grief or loss. It's a new relationship with the loss is what is forming. And gosh, repression is harmful. Acceptance is grace that allows movement. And like listening to the essence of your soul is expanding it and giving yourself grace to surrender to it. And so these are like all just beautiful tools and techniques. And it really does beautifully put together everything that's been talked about too in the last 9 days. And so it is an invitation for everybody out there to get curious with what works for you, try it on for size. There is going to be something that really resonates that you'll feel like an immediate shift. You're like, oh, wow, I really do feel good after this. And so like, make a note of that. And like she said, have it available for you, have it available to you. And then also just tapping into your authentic truth, creating those boundaries, clearly stating them, and then having compassion, not with just yourself, but for others as well. And that is the space that is able to then hold other people in a space when they need you or when you need them. And I love that it is a give and take, and it is, you get what you give and you give what you get. And the more that we start to go inward and do our body scanning and get to know ourselves, the easier authenticity will be our go-to. So I love that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think also really emphasizing that there's no one way to do it. Like your list, your toolkit will be as individual as you are. And because I lead groups and I lead group retreats, I do group preparation. And I'm giving an example here that sometimes people will tend to think they need to, if something works for 3 other people, it needs to work for them. No, it doesn't actually. And so, out of the group, I really encourage people to use their voice and say like, hey, actually guided meditation and body scans don't work for me. And so I had a client say that. And I said, she was like, yeah, meditation just is really hard for me. But whatever. And oh, maybe you're like more of a kinesthetic person. And she's like, what does that mean? I said, do you feel really good when you move? When you move your body, when you go out on a run or a walk? I said, that's moving meditation. She goes, moving meditation. I've never heard that before. Yes. Like mindfulness or meditation is being able to be fully present with yourself and what is. And that can look 10 different ways. For some people, sitting still and hearing somebody talk words at them is like the antithesis of that. Whereas if they're out and they're taking a run or they're looking at the ocean or they're whatever, that's when they get fully present to themselves and their body. So my encouragement is like, even if none of these tools work for you, go find tools that do and know that there's no right or wrong. There's only what works for you. Right. As long as it's not harming someone else. Let's be real. Like, what works for you that you can access that's, overall healthy. And when I said, I think it's interesting because there will also be probably moments that you need to numb out. And that's an interesting juxt thing as well, is to note that that's real. And that like the more you can bring healthy regulation tools in, the more you can actually not veer into unhealthy numbing that might catch up with you later in a bad way, right? So it's like, okay, sometimes we numb, and numbing is not always drugs or alcohol, right? Sometimes it's Netflix, sometimes it's whatever, sometimes it's social media, and all of those, like, also we can have a little bit of grace. Like when we're in crisis, sometimes we just need to tune out. But if it starts veering totally in this way that's ignoring the self and ignoring the voices inside, and then it will actually take on a life of its own. And we don't want that either, right? So understanding, just sort of that balance as well. Okay, I'm aware I'm numbing out. That's the first step. I'm aware that right now I just need to like sit in this on the stranger's couch and binge watch like some TV show, right? Okay, but tomorrow I'm going to center and do this and do that.
I'm loving all this. I'm loving all this. Anything come up for you, Letty?
I was just going to share. Thank you for asking. Wow, that was totally spiritual. I want you to know that when I was praying about, just Lord, let me be a vessel, like, what is the message folks need to hear? What do you want to say through me, divine power through me, and obviously through my experiences, etc. The word act, even though I was like, oh, with leadership, we know it's about being before doing, but the word act for me, just a quick way to I came with the idea of acknowledge, like we get to acknowledge to be where we are, but really the word too there is awareness, that the A is for awareness, that's where that is our true point of origin, right? Aware that, you know, we are living through a crisis, that awareness that we are under resourced, but over resourced, I would add, on the spiritual realm, right? Because we're never alone and because we are loved and divinely, so in that the hope of but that's not where we start with acknowledging our need for, you know, those resources. And then I just wanted to share that, I thought how beautiful that your gift was really, grounding yourself, anchoring yourself. What are those tools that will help you when you are ready? And then what are the other tools you get to um that you'll be receiving in this moment, right? Of crisis. So community was the C, and I'll
Mhm.
simply add that goes no need to elaborate there. The importance of community and T being trust, right? So awareness, community, and trust. Trust in yourself, right? These trusting in the higher power that loves you, that created you, that desires to dwell with you, that is with you in these hard times, and for what will be birthed through that, right? Through the brokenness. what is going to be created again in a spectrum concept, right? Or like it's not overnight. But how beautiful that this collective brought that to life. Awareness, community, and trust.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And awareness, community, trust. What a beautiful acronym. And something else that came to mind as you were talking, and again, we're just kind of like growing off each other's ideas, right? Was the idea that sometimes if you are someone who your survival mechanism is ultra independence, meaning I can't ask for help. And now you're in a point where you have to ask for help. It's really confronting. And so, what I say to layer on that is that shame is actually the opposite of responsibility. The ability to respond can really be hamstringed by shame. And what I believe the antidote to shame is acknowledging the other. Sometimes we don't want to acknowledge that we even had to accept the help. So, what we do is we don't actually complete the cycle of giving and receiving because we don't mention it. And I had this experience with a client the other day where she felt ashamed that she needed something and she was given it. And then I said, "Oh, well, when you went back to work, did you acknowledge the coworker?" No, no, I didn't really talk about it. Oh, that's interesting. You didn't really talk about it. Why? Because I felt ashamed. Okay. Well, what's interesting is acknowledging the beauty of the gift completes the cycle. It actually shifts the shame. It says, gives the gratitude and appreciation to the person who got the gift of being able to give, because that feels good. People like giving. And so I would say if you find yourself in this position where you have to accept help in a way you've never had to accept help before, and you feel shame and it actually creates a wall, just be conscious that that's survival. That's your survival mechanism now hitting up against another survival mechanism, which is I am forced to accept help and I've never had to do this before. And it sucks because it feels unsafe. So taking a moment and saying, well, how can I complete the cycle? Oh, I can look at the other person and give an acknowledgement. And something I learned in Landmark, I did Landmark in the communication course, is acknowledging someone is taking a moment to really see them, to see their heart and to be with them and to be with actually their response as you're acknowledging them. So, like, if I were to acknowledge you, Letty, it would look something like this because it's something more than a thank you, right? And it is a really solid completion of this giving and receiving that allows abundance to. So I would say, like, if I were acknowledging you, Letty, I would say, Letty, the moment I got on this call, I was struck by how your presence felt automatically inviting and nurturing, and how you were able to bring this deep connection with this openness that says, I'm not forcing my beliefs on you, but I'm calling in one of my resources to help resource you. And it came from such a place of giving and beauty. And it was so free that I felt no strings attached. And then the way that you stayed and interacted and celebrated my offering just created this even more beautiful ability for me to be resourced and therefore for everybody to be resourced. So thank you for being such a crucial holder of that web and for bringing what's uniquely your gift. So that's an acknowledgement, right? And that's like I'm able to give that because because you're giving it, and it creates this expansion of the energy rather than a contraction, which is what you do when you feel shame. don't look here, don't see me. I didn't have to accept that help. It feels, yeah. So it's like, notice that and flip it on its head.
Wow. Wow. It's incredible. Oh my goodness. I feel seen. I feel supported, and I truly feel hope. That hope, that experience of hope that was really our intention, Margarita's vision and asking, what can I do? Well, isn't that incredible how it was what one person's ask as a love offering became this experience of the collective to love and support. Nitai, I feel so grateful for this experience that you have. I loved how you kept stressing the offering. Here's the invitation. Here's just the graciousness upon which you did. I'm not an expert. I want you to be in curiosity, and it's just your love is overflowing. I am very grateful, and our and the connection that I feel in this moment is uh it's just so divine. Thank you. And that's my hope for everyone who spends, whether it's a minute or two, who've been with, I mean, it's just, it really is this: you are loved, you are supported, you are not alone. And there is possibilities. There are possibilities that we are speaking life to where there was destruction, right? Devastation. And it's each of our light, our gifts that are really, I feel, it's what's creating this safe space to provide the healing for everyone. And we get to, as we go through that journey, right? That healing, that then we can be a part of someone else's journey, and that we
Yeah.
would be used in that way. That, oh, I'm just so grateful.
And you know what's coming up for me? It's just the generosity that is in this room, right? The beautiful offering of love. And I love, Letty, how you started the call that way, right? This is my offering of love. And the invitation to be curious is also one that's standing out for me. And it's just, I am so full of gratitude right now. And I almost feel like I can't speak because my heart is expanding and the essence of my soul is also expanding right now through this call. And I couldn't have scripted this call more perfectly to end the last of the 2 weeks of this, because it really just gives permission that you're okay where you are, to let go of expectations and just be in the space of compassion and grace, and just being generous with yourself is a beautiful invitation for me and for this collective. It feels really just so perfectly scripted. It's like it's just perfect. And there are no words. There are no words. And it really just comes down to, like, the card that got pulled today. I am doing the best I can. I am enough.
Mhm.
right? And that is kind of what I feel the through line is. It's like you're doing the best you can in this moment. In this moment,
Yeah.
have grace.
And in that space, like another thing that I think can feed that grace is like knowing that in a city as diverse and incredible as Los Angeles is, when you're ready, when you're resourced enough to give back, the amount of wealth that your unique gift will give to someone is exponential. And an example of that is like I saw someone post something that said, "Hey, I'm a photographer. And if you lost all your family photos, I'm going to cry. If you lost all your family photos, I would like to take all photos of your family for free when you're ready. When you're ready, let's make some new memories. Let's make some new photos." Now, clearly, this is like, someone needs space to be able to access that. It may not be now. They want to pick out a cute outfit. They may not have access to that now. They want to be relaxed and look happy. That may not be now. But down the road, that's a beautiful gift. That's let me help you re make new memories. And so I'm also, I think, saying this to know that like have faith that when you're resourced, you never know what your unique gift could serve. I would never have thought of that as a gift. It's a beautiful gift. I will take new family photos when you're ready because I'm a photographer, right? So I have a unique skill set right now, but something that I did in Los Angeles was I was a professional face painter. What I might say is, hey, here's a gift certificate that when you guys have landed and you have a child who has a birthday party, I will come face paint at your party for free. So you can have something that's considered a luxury when you are not resourced well, right? So there's no limit to what you can provide. It just might not be immediately. You might not, but what I would ask is if you offer it, be willing to give it 6 months from now, right? Be in integrity with your
Yeah.
offering.
Give to give,
So,
right? What I'm hearing is giving to give.
yeah.
So yes, thank you for that. And as we end this call,
Mhm.
um, like I want to just point out what she just said. Like we all have a resource. We all have a resource to give. What is it? It's a gift. You're a gift. So my question to you, and I'll leave it with this, what is your love offering to the world, to yourself, to your community, to your children? Together we will rise. Together we are stronger. Community is where love and compassion and expansion lives, in my opinion, humbly. So as you go about the day and you see the world and how and in your resources, just ask yourself, what is my love offering today? So thank you again for being here. I'm so honored, to everyone who's come by and everyone here today. Until next time, just be kind to yourself, be kind to others, lead with love and spread joy, and keep moving. Keep those energies moving, baby.